Okay, Tomby, I'm now live.
Yeah, I can see and hear you. Ready to go. Go.
We talk to the legends
Yeah, I can see and hear you.
of the
Ready to go.
creative and
Go.
entertainment industries. We talk to the
Yeah, I can see and hear you.
of the
Ready to go.
creative
Go.
Lance Dean Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcasts Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Oh, for the first time, I'm going to be going straight in with my special guest, actor Jim Piddock, who has been working in the industry, I think, is it over 5 decades?
No, not that old. I'm old, but not that old.
I think it's four and a bit.
It's four and a bit, yeah.
Four and a bit.
And I suppose I'm now an actor, writer, producer rather than just an actor. But
That's right, actor, writer, producer. It does say that on the thumbnail. And an incredible body of work, 125 credits on IMDb. That's not including your credits on the stage, which are also really extensive. It's a shame there isn't an IMDb equivalent for theatre work. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Got a lot to pack in today. But before I get into all of that, I always ask my guests a couple of standard questions. And the first one of those, just to get a sense of what your own cultural upbringing was in the media and how this world impacted you when you were young. What was the first movie that you remember being taken to see as a kid on the big screen at the cinema?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I kind of have always told people it was a film called Babes in the Wood. And then I went to check that because I wasn't sure. And in fact, Babes in the Wood was a pantomime. So it was actually probably the first thing I saw in the theatre. And then I looked up Babes in the Wood in the IMDb just in case I was wrong. And I found one for 1962. And I went, oh, well, I was 6 then. So that was maybe the first film. And I looked at the description and it said, 3 young women out on a drive end up stranded in the woods alongside the road and end up at a nudist camp. And the poster says, filmed in tickle pink, adults only. And I actually listened to I watched the trailer, which is fantastic. It's so bad. I'm going to actually play you a little so you just can enjoy this.
Follow 3 gorgeous young ladies as they go to camp, finding plenty of mischief along the way. These girls aren't ashamed of their beautiful bodies and show them off at every opportunity. Watch the girls as they tantalize a poor gas station owner, bathe in a waterfall, and even seduce the camp director. Set among the beautiful scenery, this is a truly hilarious camp film. Step back in time and take a trip in the woods with these babes.
How about that? And there's pictures of bottoms and tits and stuff.
If I didn't know better, I would say that was what's his name from the Ghostbusters doing the voiceover for that. Who sadly passed away now, who played Igor. Oh my God, his name's just gone off my tongue.
It could well be, but I have a feeling that my parents didn't take me to that movie when I was 6. I just have a feeling that that wasn't the one. So I have to say that the first film I think that I saw was Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins. Funny enough, a Disney movie is the answer that a lot of people give. One of the first I saw was Bambi, and remember being traumatized at the death of the mother accordingly. What was the last film you paid for a ticket to go and see on the big screen?
Well, I can't answer that because I honestly can't remember. And I asked my wife, and she couldn't remember. To be fair, I haven't actually been to a movie in a movie theatre, apart from a sort of industry screening for a long, long while, probably pre-COVID, because I watch about 120 movies between November and February, or October and February, for the Academy. So
Right.
to just blitz that, and I after that I movied out for a while.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I can't remember. I wish I could tell you, but it was a long while ago.
I think we'll let that one slide.
Thank
In the
you.
last 20 years, has there been a drama television series that you've watched, not one that you've been in, that you've thought, God, this is benchmark television. I want to do something like this.
Absolutely. I was very late to it, very, very late to it, but I watched all of The Wire last year. And,
Yeah, excellent show.
it's extraordinary. Yeah.
If you haven't seen The Shield, I highly recommend that as well. It dropped the same year, and it kind of got a bit overlooked because of The Wire, but it's a really, really good cop show. Fantastic. Is there a role that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet? Something in particular, like the captain of a starship on Star Trek, or a particular role in Shakespeare?
No, I've played the captain of the Queen Mary, but I haven't played the captain of a starship. I would love to be in a sci-fi type thing, because it's not something I write or have generally done a lot of at all. And it's a world that would be kind of fun to do. So that would be great. I mean, I'd love to be in one of those big franchise. I've been in, obviously, Lethal Weapon and Independence Day franchise movies. I'd like to be in a nice big English one, the Harry Potters or something like that. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talking of Independence Day, it was actually that movie that first brought you to my attention. And then not long after that, I also caught you in, I think it was Best in Show was the next one I saw you in, which we'll talk about. I want to show this clip.
Just attempted to compile a list of casualties and losses, but information is sketchy at best.
Well, we know we've lost the Belgian contingent in the Sinai. There's a strong possibility there may be more reinforcement hiding in the Golan Straits.
What
The hell's he saying?
It seems they're getting a signal. Old Morse code. It's from the Americans. They want to organize a counter-offensive.
It's about bloody time. What do they plan to do?
I've got to tell you, I'm an absolute sucker for that movie. I've got to find a way to stop the clip now because it's still playing. But that's a film that I probably watch at least once every year.
Wow.
And I've got the extended cut of it with all the stuff that was deleted as well. Was there a specific brief that you were given for that scene, like be as British as you can?
Not really. I don't think so. I think it was just a question of me playing. I can still hear it in the background. I just no. I mean, Roland just let us do our thing. What's remarkable watching it now is, how little I've aged. I look exactly the same, and very few people know that I also played the Arab character. So that's extraordinary, the versatility there. That was actually one of the first dramas I did, because I've mostly been known for comedy early in my career. That was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, because I mean, you started off. You went to drama school in the UK.
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Drama studio based in Ealing. Yeah, I went there for a year. It was a postgraduate course. I'd been to university, so I did a 1-year course.
What was the thing that I know you started off doing stage work, and you did a one-man show that got you quite a bit of press in the States. What was the thing that enabled you to make that leap to the States and work in the States? Because back then it was the visa thing and stuff was quite difficult.
Yeah, well, I was offered a job by that drama school. They opened a branch in Berkeley, California, and they asked me to go out there and direct a couple of shows. And I directed one thing at the age of 24 in Rep, and I was an actor in Rep in those days. And so I went out to California for 3 months, and I had in my back pocket this one-man show that I asked the writer if I could do in the States. It was about a soccer goalkeeper, or soccer. I'd see how American I've become. A football goalkeeper are playing a game on a Sunday morning, and who used to be a big shot and was sort of talking to the audience as he plays. It's an incredible piece in terms of physicality. And I went to every single theater in the Bay Area, San Francisco, probably 50 theaters, big, small, medium, and none of them, first of all, they went, "Who are you?" And quite rightly. And what's soccer? At that point, it was completely unknown. And get out of my office was the other thing. And then I was literally about to come back, and this guy called me as artistic director of a small 99-seat theater in San Francisco, and said, "Look, the first show of my season's suddenly fallen out. We start in 3 weeks. Can you get your one-man show together in 3 weeks?" And I said, "Yes, I can," not knowing if I could or not. And I managed to hire a terrific British director called Richard Side, who I'd met out there. We put the show together, and the first night was a bit hairy, but I had a full audience of 99 people, because all the people I was directing at the drama school were obviously wanted to see me fall flat on my face and make a tit of myself. And then the second night I had 4 people in the audience, which was extraordinary, because they all sat in the front row. And I did the show for an hour and a half, just non-stop, bang, bang, bang. And very sweetly, they gave me a standing ovation at the end, the 4 people. And then the reviews came out the next day, and fortunately, it was sort of an actor's wet dream, and the show was then sold out and won awards. And I think it was extended twice, and then took me to other cities and to New York. And within a month or so of being in New York, I was cast in a Broadway play with George C. Scott. So that show totally launched my career from nowhere, from doing regional rep in England, weekly and fortnightly rep. So we're not even talking about high-end rep, to being on Broadway within the space of about 2 years.
So yeah, when you started working on Broadway, that put you in touch with what I would call the Broadway set of the time, which would include the likes of Frank Langella, and very much kind of pillars of New York theatre. Yeah. Is that when you first came into the orbit of Christopher Guest?
No, that was later. I mean, I actually took over a role from Frank Langella in a George C. Scott directed Design for Living, Noel Coward's, and I took over his role. But no, I didn't really. I actually bizarrely came to the notice of Steven Spielberg, who took the rights to Noises Off. He got the rights to Noises Off, which I was in for a year. And then, of course, when the movie was made, none of us were in it. Such is the way of Hollywood. So no, I didn't actually meet Chris till many, many years later.
What was it like being directed by George C. Scott? Because I mean, he's a formidable.
Well, it was interesting. I'd say in fact, I calculated. I won't say. I'll tell you. He missed 1 out of every 8 shows a week through illness. He was a ridiculously heavy drinker. He was in mid-50s. He didn't like rehearsing much. He would rehearse for about 3 or 4 hours a day. And Christine Larty was in it, and Christine would stop rehearsals and go, "Oh, George, what's my, not quite sure what my motivation is here in this scene." And he'd just go, "Your motivation is come on stage, say your lines, and get the fuck off stage, okay?" And that was basically his form of directing. He said, I got a Detroit Tigers game I want to watch this afternoon. So it was an interesting experience. The last night, we were in for about 7 or 8 months. Nathan Lane was in that show. Kate Burton, Richard Burton's daughter, was in that show. Yeah. Dana, a lot of great people. And we finished on a Sunday afternoon, but the Saturday night, he took everyone out in the cast to Gallagher's Steakhouse. And after the show, and I've never seen anyone drink so much in my life. I mean, I can occasionally, drink a little bit, like I'm having a beer now, which is occasional beer. But that night, we started after the show would have been about 11 o'clock, and we left there probably at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Right.
And I was, ready to crash, and we had a matinee the next day. And I went into the theater, and I was walking to my dressing room, and I went past George's dressing room, and he was sitting there with the door open, sitting in his boxer shorts. Now, the one thing that one discovered about George while working with him is the less clothes he wears, the more drunk he is. And I kind of had this proven by other directors that have worked with him. And so I was walking past and he goes, Jimmy, come here, Jimmy. And so I went in his dressing room and he started talking to me. And I realized that I couldn't understand a word he was saying. He was really, really drunk. And I thought, we are completely fucked. I can swear on this show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's listed as not for kids. You can swear and you can drink.
Okay, good. I'm doing both. I'm not going to smoke because I don't smoke. Anyway, I knew that we were in deep trouble because the show was going up in 25 minutes or whatever. And I went to Mike Ritchie, the stage manager, and I said, Mike, we can't do the show. And he said, well, the understudy's already gone home. So it's the last show, it's packed out there. And so I went and got changed. I shared the dressing room with Nathan. We got ready and I told Nathan, this is going to be an absolute disaster. Anyway, we did the show, matinee. George C. Scott did not miss a single beat. He didn't miss a line. He didn't flub a line. He didn't slur a line. It was extraordinary to watch. He pulled himself together and gave a performance that was exactly as good or better than any he'd ever done in that entire 7-month run.
Right.
And it was both astonishing and absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Because everybody else knew how drunk he was. Anyway, that's my experience for George.
For all you kids watching, don't try that at home. You may not be able to pull it off.
Don't try it at all. I once was slightly drunk on stage in a university play, and I've never done it again. Never ever since. I was 9, and I hated it. I felt so out of control. I've never ever done it again.
No, I've always been sober when I'm working, so not a road I wanna test.
No.
Let's move on to the. I mean, there's so your CV, as anyone can see, just looking across the 125 plus credits. Like I said, not including stage credits on IMDb, and the range of work, everything from voiceovers, animation, big feature films, iconic television series. But at some point, you came into the orbit of Christopher Guest and company. This would have been post This Is Spinal Tap, I think.
Yeah. It was after Waiting for Guffman.
That's right, Waiting for Guffman. And I mean, I've heard so many wonderful stories about him. I haven't heard a bad story about him in the industry. Everybody says, that group is a wonderful group of people to be involved with. I mean, tell us how that first came about and also your experiences of working that way, because it's a bit like a Mike Lee equivalent, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Ricky Gervais described the Christopher Guest troupe as the best improvisers in the world, comic improvisers, and I think there's some truth to that. I knew Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara socially, and I'd met Chris a couple of times socially at various parties, and Chris is very opposite of Jamie Lee Curtis, his wife, who's extremely extrovert, and Chris is the exact opposite. And if you
he's quite reserved, isn't he? He's quite a reserved man.
That's an understatement of the century. He can literally be monosyllabic for several hours at a social situation. So I didn't really know him very well, but they were casting Best in Show and putting it together. At that point, it was called just the Dog Show movie, and Eugene. They wanted someone to pair with Fred Willard, who would be a straight man. And I had actually played very few straight men. I was always kind of the clown. And for some reason, Eugene had seen me in something. Oh, I think Eugene had seen me play Prince Charles in a terrible TV miniseries. And he recommended that Chris meet me. And so I met with him in their office about this job, about this part. And both Eugene and Chris are socially, shall we say, awkward.
Right.
And so I found myself sitting in that office babbling, just talking, just to fill the horrible silences and embarrassing silences. And after about 5 minutes, I thought, this is really getting disastrous very quickly. So I said, look, here is a DVD, or it could have been a video in those days, I don't remember, of what I've done. Have a look, and you'll see kind of what I do. And I drove home and I was driving home thinking, how could I have handled that better? That was really awkward. And I got a call in the car, and it was Chris, and he said, "Is this Jim?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Chris Rodriguez. Would you like to be in the movie?" And that was basically it. That was how it started. And I had a bit of an issue because I was writing and producing a series for the BBC when they were shooting Best in Show. So I had to fly out from London on a Monday after the read-through, and I'd given my notes. And then shoot arrived on Monday night. We were going to shoot on Tuesday, and then I'd fly back Wednesday and do the last 2 days in London. But they were running behind, so Tuesday didn't happen, and then Wednesday didn't happen. And then I said, "Look, I can't." They said, "Well, we're still behind. We have to shoot Friday." And I said, "Well, I can't because I've got to leave." So we shot all our stuff. Fred Willard and I shot all our stuff in one day, which is pretty extraordinary. When you think about, we're in the last 25 minutes of that movie.
Yeah.
That was probably the most amount of film that's ever appeared on screen that was shot in a single day. I think it was extraordinary how much we did. And luckily, Fred was a genius, and I just rode on his coattails and was the straight man and learned how to be a straight man. And then I flew back on Friday and gave my notes on the run through of the sitcom, and was there for the taping of it that Friday night. So it was quite a busy week.
I mean,
Vancouver we were shooting. So I'm talking about London to Vancouver.
Watching that film now, I mean, Best in Show is still a film that people talk about.
Yeah.
It's a film I get actors to watch in my acting class, and just showing a quick clip of it here. I don't know how, for the life of me, you managed to keep a straight face.
A thorough going over.
When-
Are all judges that thorough?
when you-
I mean, she looks at the teeth.
Yeah.
It's very important that all the attributes are examined. Teeth, eyes, ears,
Ouch.
gums.
Am I seeing right? Where's she putting her hands now?
She's just checking out the dog's testicular area to make sure that everything is intact.
Hate to go out on a date with Judge Edie Franklin, have her judge me. That'd be no fun.
I mean, like, every time it cuts away from you, you look like you're about to burst. I mean, was it a quick? Did they just set it up and just keep running, and you just kept it sort of?
Yeah, and they wouldn't let me know. We had dinner the night before, and I met. Actually, the night I got in, I was jet lagged. I met Chris, Eugene, and Fred, and they made me leave the dinner table while they asked Fred what he was planning to do, because it's largely improvised, pretty much.
Yeah, and you wanted.
So, I had no idea what was coming at me, so I had to react in real time. And what I enjoyed about seeing the film was I worked so much less hard than I had before to be funny or to be in a act. And I thought, this is really interesting, acting with a small a, and I felt like it was contributing to the movie by being very real, and that's what Chris wanted. And the biggest compliment, he called me once after a test screening and said, "Look, I've got to give you the biggest compliment I can give any actor." He said, "We did a what do they call it? A survey afterwards of all the people. I can't remember what they call it." And what people thought of the film, and everyone said, "How did you manage to get that real dog show expert to be in the movie and be funny without knowing he was in a funny movie?" And he said, "Well, actually, he's an actor." And there were two things that made me very happy from an acting point of view, and very sad from a career point of view, because it meant no one knew who the fuck I was. But actually, that film kind of put me on the map in a funny way in terms of being a screen actor.
One of my regulars who's in the chat is just saying, I don't have a question about Best in Show. I just want to hear all about it. You find something new in Best in Show every single time you watch it. I think
it's a movie that never gets old. I mean, I don't watch it a lot, but whenever it is a movie that holds up 25 years later, and very few movies you can say that, especially comedies. Very few comedies hold up 25 years later, but most of Chris's films do. and that. But I think Best in Show is the creme de la creme.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the Spinal Tap sequel.
Yeah.
Will you be popping in an appearance in that
No,
one?
no. I mean, the last thing I did with Chris was something we wrote together and we produced together and we were acting in together was
Mascots. Yeah.
For Netflix, yeah. Which is kind of Best in Show in silly sports mascot costumes.
Yeah, it's Best in Show meets the furries.
Yeah, and that's probably my second favorite Christopher Guest movie, and then Mighty Wind maybe. I'm not sure. And a Guffman's up there too.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from Best in Show.
Yeah.
Was there a point where your career necessitated you to live in LA?
I think after I'd done 3 years on Broadway in various shows and off Broadway, I always wanted to do film and TV. I'd been in theatre for the first 7 or 8 years of my career, and I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't call myself an out-and-out theatre person.
Okay.
I got very bored very quickly doing 8 shows a week. Always wanted to do television or film. So I kind of went to LA cold. You know, I did that show that I took over from Frank Langella. It was the first show I had my name above the title on Broadway. And a lot of people were like, well, you've got a huge Broadway career. Why would you leave? But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I have found that every time I've taken a big risk in my career or life in general, and done what I wanted to do from my gut, it's been difficult and never smooth, but it's always been the right choice, and it's always paid off. And it took me a while to get going in LA, but when I did, it paid off, and I'm so glad I did. And I loved LA anyway. I loved being there. I'm just in the process of selling my house there, having lived there for 40 years.
I lived there myself for about 4 months in the early 2000s. I think it was around 2003, I want to say, or maybe 4.
Yeah.
How did you find? I don't know. I found as a sort of independent writer director, I could get 8 actors together in London and I could put a play on in the Fringe, and I could do all of that within 3 months. Trying to do that in LA when everybody's looking for the next party and that was an absolute nightmare. It was impossible. And there was a lot more opportunities in Los Angeles for sure. I was having loads of meetings and all of that kind of thing. But I found something very inauthentic about it, and I found that didn't sit with me. I just wondered what was your experience in that way?
I don't think I found it inauthentic. I found that theatre was certainly the bastard cousin. It was the poor man's relation. So I did a bit of theatre when I first went there, and then realised that it was not what I wanted to do at all. I don't know if I found people inauthentic, and I've got to be honest with you, I've been lied to more to my face, or as much, by British executives and Canadian executives as I have American. I mean, I find that the bullshit level is pretty similar.
Yeah, that's true.
And I didn't find it inauthentic, but then maybe I'm completely unauthentic. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it didn't, everyone kept saying, oh, it's so fake and this. I go, well, it's not fake because I'm here and I'm touching things and it's real. And yeah, everyone's on the make and every waiter is an actor or a writer. And, you know, it's a factory town. But I didn't find it necessarily fake. In fact, you know, my time among writers and actors who I spend most of my time with and directors, I find them pretty genuine. I mean, a lot of directors are megalomaniacs, but I find writers and actors pretty genuine, and I made many friends in that community.
Well, I think the group around Christopher Guest's orbit, that particular group of actors are among they're considered to be the nicest people in the business, like Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah. I think I was also lucky because I always worked in fairly high-end material. I don't think I ever did anything too low. Well, I have done some low-rent stuff, but I just found people. I know I didn't. I got to be honest. I didn't find it inauthentic, unless the whole business is inauthentic.
How did you find doing a show, what I would call is like a well-oiled machine that you're stepping into? You do a guest spot on an episode of Friends. I think it was in 2001, if I remember rightly. Playing a character called Dennis.
Yeah.
How is that compared to doing a role on Independence Day? Say, is there a difference in terms of time you might get to go over the scene? Is it much the same? Because Friends is such a well-oiled machine. You must be in and out pretty.
Yeah, I mean, by that stage they were shooting Friends in 4 days. It was a weird. I think I was in season 8. It's a different format because you're shooting multi-camera with an audience. So you rehearse for 3 days and then shoot the 4th day and with an audience there. I actually loved that week because I was with some fantastic experienced actors. There was Elliot Gould, who had less lines than I did. There was Christine Baranski, Morgan Fairchild, and the 4 of us kind of were the old lags. And we kind of just hung out together. I mean, I was actually slightly younger than all of them. I mean, Elliot Gould, not that many years before, had been one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. I mean, he was literally at the top of the A-list. And so to be doing a show where we were, all of us had, a couple of scenes and that's it. And we were the kind of old lags where these people were being paid $750,000 an episode at that point.
Yeah.
It was a weird kind of feeling, but it was great because we hung out together. And I knew Lisa Kudrow from before. We'd not worked together, but we'd been in shows in the same theatre, and so I knew her a little bit. We'd both been on Mad About You, the TV show, and I found the women a little bit guarded, but I think they'd become so famous they were sort of a bit guarded generally. The guys were fantastic. They were all wonderful, and I had a really lovely week. And I knew the writers quite well, and it was fun. I mean, it's a real perfectionist show. They reshoot stuff. When you do shoot it in front of the audience, it goes on forever because they keep trying. Oh, let's just change this line and let's do this. So it's really perfectionist stuff. But I enjoyed that week very, very much. But bizarrely, it sort of is a blip in my career. I mean, I had a couple of scenes in one episode, but that show probably, because it has survived several generations, it is watched now by it's probably a 3rd generation of people across the world, the globe. I'm probably recognized globally more from that than almost anything else. It's bizarre.
I've been rewatching it recently, a couple of episodes a night before I go to bed. It's a great kind of before you turn off kind of show. And I'd forgotten just how great the writing is.
Yeah.
Really, really good writing. A quality of which unfortunately seems to be a bit rare these days. You yourself have moved into writing and producing, and do you want to talk us through a little bit of that? Kind of how that started and what drew you to that?
Yeah.
What are the kinds of things you like to write about?
Well, I always wanted to write, and I kind of tinkered with it. And then shortly after I got to LA, I was dating someone who was an ex-writer from Saturday Night Live. And she said, you should write. And so I said, well, I'd love to. And we actually came up with an idea together. We had got this dog that was an absolute nightmare. And we were telling some friends some stories about this torture this dog had put us through. And they said, you've got to write this movie. It's hilarious. So I wrote a first draft, and my now ex-wife, Margaret, wrote the second draft. And we then wrote a third one together. And we gave it to her agent, and it sold for a 6-figure sum within a week. It never got made because there was a lawsuit with another studio who had sort of knowingly ripped off some of the stuff because they did another movie that was similar, and I can't say what it is.
Okay.
But
that's a 6-figure sum though for a a script?
Yeah, and I had to do legal depositions and stuff for the first film I ever wrote because there was a lawsuit. I wasn't, I mean, I was an innocent witness. But we got paid upfront, and so we made quite a lot of money. And then suddenly I had a writing career, and then I had a film made at the Goldwyn Company that I wrote on my own, a thriller, actually, a mystery thriller. And suddenly I had a writing career, and that's been ever since. That was, I guess, that was probably 1990, around there, 1989, and then since then I've been really a writer and an actor, and then I started producing along the way as well.
So the first one, the thriller that you're talking about, would that have been Traces of Red?
Yeah, Traces of Red.
Yeah, and then you did One Good Turn after that, which I've seen. The collaboration with Christopher Guest was Mascots.
Mascots and Family Tree we did for HBO and the BBC, the series with Chris.
Yeah, actually, do you know what? I've seen all of Family Tree.
It's great. I think it's a lovely series. We were very proud of it. I think it's slow to get going because the first episode sets the table, but Chris always says he thinks his best work is in that series.
How did you find that collaborating with Chris? And what was I'm collaborating with another writer on a feature film at the minute. In fact, we've just submitted the final draft to the production company. Can you share the process with us a little bit? How that's worked for you? Did you do it back and forth? A
little bit different because it is fairly improvised movie, but oddly it takes longer to write an outline, a 30-page outline for an improvised movie than it does for a scripted movie. But
I can imagine that, actually.
Partly because Chris works very, very, very slowly, and I'm like a whirlwind when I write. So it was a good balance. We just met and talked for about, he said, brought this idea to me, and we talked for a month or two, and then we sat down and started to talk some more, and I scribbled down loads of notes and he scribbled down notes. And we did that for about 4 months, and then I went away and wrote first draft of this outline, and he looked at it and we tinkered with it and played with it. And then we got it together, went out and sold it. But the reason you have to spend so much time is because when people are improvising, if you don't have a really detailed outline that's very specific in who people are and what they're doing, you can go very fast off the rails. And so, you have to do that. And we suggest jokes, we write jokes, every beat of every scene is in there. It can go in other directions if it wants to. So it takes a while, and we write really, really detailed character biographies for each character, literally like where they went to school, what their dog was called when they were kids. And so when the actors get the material, they have something to work with, and then they can fill out the rest. And then on the day, there's no rehearsal at all. On the day, you just shoot and you see what you get. And if you don't come up with something in the first take, you're not going to be in the movie. And then we do maybe 3 takes at most, 4. And it's reverse of a normal thing where you'd start with the master and then close in and do close-ups. We do the exact opposite. You have 2 or 3 cameras going, and you do all the close-ups, because the first take usually is the best in terms of improvisation. And then we'll tinker with it and say, let's keep that line and not do that line, and then this, and go in this direction and not that direction. And then we whittle it down, and at the very end, we do a master shot. So it's a very different way of working. And I would say those Mascots and Family Tree, it's a little different because those are half hours, but Mascots, the film took us maybe 6 months to write, whereas I can normally write a scripted movie in 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Do you have a preference over acting, writing, or producing? And I'm assuming you got into producing because, like me, you learned that that's where some of the money's made.
No, it wasn't just a monetary thing. It was just it became with the territory. As in television, you're usually a writer-producer, if you're a creator of the show. And then in films, I've sort of worked my way up from being an associate producer to executive producer, and now full-time producer. But What was your original question? I got sidetracked.
Whether you had a preference over working outside over acting.
Yeah, that's a question I do get asked a lot, and I always have the same stock answer. If you held a gun to my head and said you have to choose between one of the two, I would say acting because it's so much easier.
Right. Yeah.
I love writing and I find it really engaging. And day to day, I find it probably more satisfying. And you can't act on your own at home. So I can get up, I can do my writing, and it feels fulfilling at the end of the day. But if I had to choose, someone said, you're going to spend, even 50% of your life doing this job or that job, and the rest is you're out of work. I would choose acting. I would choose acting.
Well, what would you say? There's been a lot of changes in the industry, especially in the last 10 years. Some of them have been technical. Obviously, digital technology has massively changed the way things are shot, how fast we can shoot, how fast we can edit, stuff like that. But then you've also had things like intimacy coordinators and that kind of thing. And there was an interesting story I read recently. I forget which actress was involved. It was an A-list actress who was doing a scene with a younger actor, and the intimacy coordinator stepped up to have their say, and the older actress turned around and dismissed them basically and said, "We'll be all right, you can go now." And I thought, wow, I wonder what would happen if a male actor did that and said that when the intimacy coordinator stepped up. I'm not sure the response would be, the same. It's there's some weird things that have happened in the industry around certain areas. And I mean, there's that line from Laurence Olivier. I think he said it to Dustin Hoffman on the set of Marathon Man: "Just try acting, darling," something like that. I just wonder what your views were on the changes, which things you might think are for the better, which maybe not so much.
Yeah, they're all worse. I mean, there's no question to me that there used to be a camaraderie on sets, whether it be theatre, film, television, where all bets were off. And of course, there were certain wankers who abused it and crossed the line. So I think they had to bring in certain regulations. But sadly, it's not as much fun anymore. It's just not. I mean, I got to be honest. Chris Guest and I sat through a list of things that NBC had to tell us and the BBC had to tell us when we were doing our show, and what we could and couldn't do, and we weren't supposed to go out for a drink with the actors after a rehearsal of the show or this and that, and we just almost fell asleep and we ignored it all and went, "Oh, this is ridiculous." I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's I'm quite a left-wing person. I'm sort of centre-left politically and socially, but I hate the term woke because it makes me annoyed. It's a misuse of the word. What I think is woke means you're empathetic, which is good, which is a very good thing. What I do not like is people who are over woke, and it becomes fascistic in terms of you can and cannot say, and like communism was socialism that went fascistic. You can't do that in comedy. You cannot do that. You have to have the freedom in a writer's room to be revolting, disgusting, and to break all the rules. And then you can pull it back to where you want, because that's where the creative process is. It's not clean, it's dirty and whatever. And I think that it's very restrictive, and these kind of, these associates or whatever they were, their assistants who were complaining that they went into a writer's room and they heard people making misogynistic jokes. That's the point. You do that to get it, to exercise it, and then you know where you can be, and it's part of the process. And I think that it's really sad that we've got to a point where I think comedians are now working with it and actually making good jokes about people being too overwoke. So I think we will get past it. But I think if you are on the liberal side of things, socially or liberally or politically, it's a huge mistake, this preciousness over pronouns and his and her and theirs. It's a huge mistake, because it causes culture wars, and it's all bollocks. Who gives a fuck what your pronoun is? I don't care whether someone wants to be he, her, him, they, it, whatever. I don't care about any of that. If anyone wants to identify as a tortoise, that's fine by me. Just leave me alone and don't tell me what I have to do.
Yeah.
I'll be respectful of you. I will always respect what you want, but do not tell me what I have to do, because that's fascism.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. A friend of mine did a really good video on the word woke when it started being overused, and he said the thing that was missing from the term was nuance, and then he went on to explain what that was. And he broke it down in a very similar way to what you did yourself just now.
Yeah, there were no lines drawn. There were no lines. There was no nuance at all. I mean, sexual assault covers the range of someone just whistling at a woman to rape. That's sexual assault. All of that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and sort of you have to grade it and go, that's criminal and that's disgusting behavior and that's pretty tasteless, and that's it. But you can't lump everything together.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened, and it's made sets very tense. It's made the business not nearly as fun as it used to be. I mean, people used to do things that now people would be horrified by, and it was all just jocular. And unfortunately, as I say, people abused it, and there are the Harvey Weinsteins and the people like that who, Bill Cosby's and stuff like that. And I don't mind saying they should be in jail for the rest of their life. They're disgusting people and they're criminals. But there's a difference between that and someone like Dustin Hoffman, who got caught in this whole thing, who was like Benny Hill. He just used to make Benny Hill jokes, basically. And he was completely harmless. His wife was next to him when he was doing it. It wasn't like there was any sense of indecency. And yet, he got called, and luckily that kind of went away. But that's nuts. It's nuts and self-defeating. And Ricky Gervais has got it right with his, stand-up about people are outraged on behalf of other people now, and offended on behalf of other people, and that's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before we see a 6 or 10 part miniseries that covers the rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein.
Probably.
That show's coming, and I remember saying to my ex-partner, because I'm a huge fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I imagine you probably watched that show.
Well, I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, but yeah, okay.
Please do. The guy who plays Larry David's agent, Jeff Garlin.
Yeah,
I always just used to say to my ex-wife, that guy is going to play Harvey Weinstein one day in the Harvey Weinstein biopic miniseries. It's got to be that guy. He's the best person for the role. He sounds like Harvey Weinstein. He looks like Harvey Weinstein. And then,
except he's a lovely guy. But
yeah, well, I've heard very nice things about him. And no sooner as I said that, they actually put that joke in the show. They had someone mistake him and attack him in a restaurant or something. You said you had a story about Curb. Please tell us.
Yeah. This has got this. By the way, this conversation is far more serious than I normally am. I'm a bit more flippant and jocular.
You've been very jocular, but
when I wrote the book, which is called "Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales in a Life in Hollywood," which I'm just plugging now, 3 years ago, whatever, I tell a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories, and some of them are self-deprecating, some of them are enlightening. I only really trash 4 people, and the reason the book is so popular with people in the industry is that they say everyone tells the stories, but they don't name names. I named names, and I'll tell you why I named names, because I named all the people I really loved and liked and who are great.
Right.
And I thought, if I do that, I have the right to tell you who is a cunt. And I have a chapter where I said, there's actually one chapter saying there's 10 A-listers I worked with, 9 I adored, and 1 was a cunt. And no one guesses who it is. By the end of the chapter, I reveal. But there's one person who I do say not very good things about, and that's Larry David.
Right.
And I'll tell you why, because the character he plays on Curb, by the way, he's incredibly talented. And I've watched Curb Your Enthusiasm a couple of times and thought it's great, but I can't watch it because I know too much about him. When I first went to LA, I auditioned for Seinfeld.
Right.
I was 30 years old, maybe less than that. And it was a British role, and there were all sorts of people in the waiting room of all ages. There was a 60-something actor, every single age range, shape and size, and British. And I went in, and it was in Larry David's office, and he was at his desk, and there were a range of writer-producers, including Seinfeld and the casting director. And they introduced themselves. Larry David didn't say a word. And they said, well, okay, let's start the scene. And the minute the casting director started the scene with me, Larry David put his feet up on the desk and opened a newspaper. So he couldn't see me, or he could hear me, but he couldn't see me. And it really threw me. But luckily, the other writer producers, including Jerry Seinfeld, were paying attention and laughing at the scene. So I kind of got through it. But it really, really pissed me off, because that's not passive aggressive, that's aggressive aggressive. And I don't know whether it was a test, because there was a part of me that wanted to rip that newspaper away and smack him in the face. And I didn't, because I was a young actor trying to make my way in Hollywood. And I left there, and I was going into the parking lot out in the studio. And I was just about to get in my car, and the actor who had followed me was the 60-something-year-old actor who was way older than me, 30 years older. And he came out of the building, the studio building, and he was red in the face and looked really upset. And I kind of was curious, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "No." He said, and he told me the exact same thing had happened to him.
Right. So he did it to every actor.
Yeah. And I thought that was unforgivable, because I think that's not just impolite. That's asking to get smashed in the face, basically. It's disgusting behavior. And I actually, by bizarre coincidence, and this happens sometimes in life, I've encountered him 3 times in my life. The second time was 3 days later at a wedding, and I was invited to, and he was in the same row as me at the wedding. Two people. And I managed to hold myself back from throttling him. And I didn't see him again for 30-something years, 40 years. I had 30-something years. And I went to Ed Begley's 70th birthday party about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was a big event, a lot of celebs, a lot of non-celebs, a lot of behind-the-scenes people, a lot of people there. And it was in full swing. And I noticed Larry David enter the room, into the house. And not one person, not one single person there went up to say hello to him. And he must have known at least 75% of the people in that house.
Right.
And I just thought, I'm right.
Well, I mean, he plays a grumpy curmudgeon in the show. I guess he's a grumpy curmudgeon in real life.
That version of him in the show is a really nice grumpy curmudgeon.
Yeah, it's a kind of grumpy curmudgeon with a good heart, whereas maybe the reality.
Listen, I've misjudged people before. I've met people and thought, yeah, they're assholes. And then I met them again and they were okay, and then I kind of got to know them, and then they were like, okay, they're just hard to get through at first.
Everybody has a bad day, you know.
Absolutely. And also people sometimes, are different, but my gut feeling with him was either he was A, a total asshole, or B, a total asshole. That was it.
We're coming into the last 10 minutes. So I've got a couple of things I want to touch upon before I do plug your book again. Just to remind people, Jim's got a fantastic book out with a naughty forward, no less, by Eric Idle of Monty Python fame. Jim's book is called Caught with My Pants Down. All the information for it is there. I've put the links for buying it both in the UK and America in the information below this stream. You can order it from Amazon. It's only available in hardback, in physical copy at the minute. I don't do Kindles myself. My physical copy is on its way. Jim has promised when I come and share a glass of wine with him in the deep dives of France, he'll sign it for me.
It's actually available on audiobook and Kindle too.
But it's not softback yet.
Oh no, it is. It is.
Oh, it is. Oh well, I've got the hardback coming, so I've got the pristine
No,
hardbacks are nice.
it's all four of them. It's hardback, softback, audio, and Kindle. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you just before we talk about the book to wrap up.
Yeah.
This is a question I like to ask my guests who've been in the show game, business for in the trenches, as I like to say, for a while.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you've been married previously because you referred to an ex-wife. I've referred to an ex-partner. Our business is not great for longevity of relationships. We all look up in awe to our Lord Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick, who are still holding strong, and I think they're two of the loveliest individuals you could ever meet or hope to work with. And of course Jamie Lee Curtis and Christopher Guest would be another example. But there's a lot of people that haven't made it. Some people that have done the rounds 4 times. Work-life balance, really difficult to get right in this industry. Have you got any thoughts looking back on that now? Would older Jim give younger Jim any particular tips about that?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's just our business. I mean, I think it's society as a whole. I mean,
That's true.
You know about it more in our business because it becomes headline news. I mean, I just went on an hour-long drive to a hardware shop with my builder, who is of Algerian descent. He's French, and we were talking about stuff, and he doesn't speak any English, and he turned to me with a wry smile and said, "I've been married 3 times." And I turned back to him with a wry smile and said, "So have I." So, I don't think it's just people in show business. I would say I got lucky in that I kind of found the right balance and the right partner at 55 years old.
Right.
So I think that, younger me was not able to deal with certain things. But younger, anybody is not able to, whether they be an actor or anything, I mean, I think you just mature and you get to a point where you know how to avoid certain kind of confrontations. And when you're kind of older, you kind of figure that out. It's like, that's a battle not worth fighting, or this is who I am, and I'm not really going to change that much, and they say that's who I am and I'm not going to change it, and you go, okay, well, that's great. And you can short circuit things. When you're younger, I think it's much harder, and when you're kind of really all sort of trying to make a career or trying to raise kids and do this and that, pay off mortgages, I think the stresses are different. I don't think there's any advice I'd give anybody other than don't rush into marriage, because it's hard.
That's a good piece of advice. So caught your pants down. I've written several books myself, so I'm very interested to know this with you. From right, I'm going to do this, to okay, here's sending it to your publisher. How long did that take?
Well, I tinkered with the idea I'd scribbled down bits and pieces, and I thought I had a few stories. And then during the lockdown and COVID, I thought, now's the time. I was writing a series at the time, and I had that done within 4 or 5 months. And I thought, let me try this. And it was really hard because I don't like looking backwards. I always look forwards, or right in front of me. Present and future are interesting to me. The past is not particularly interesting, despite the fact that as you get older, you have to talk about it more, like today. But I think it was a struggle to write, because I had to go through my whole life and make sure things were right. And I enjoyed writing certain stories. It's a tough process, writing a book. It's a tough process. I found it much harder. It took me about, to be honest, probably 4 to 6 months to write. And then I sent it out to a bunch of people. And then this one publisher, independent publisher on the East Coast of the United States, called me and said, I got your book, and normally it goes to a reader and I get the report, but he said, I it landed on my desk for some reason, and I was free that evening, and I just flicked it open and started reading. And he said I stayed up till 4:30 a.m. and finished the book. And he said, so I want to publish it.
That's nice.
So I got lucky. That was really, I mean, I'd be loath to write another. I did think of writing a sequel. Who needs pants anyway? Because I've got so many other stories. And pants obviously means different things in the US and the UK.
Yeah, trousers.
But now the only other book I think I might write now is as I transition from living in Los Angeles for 4 decades to now living in the south of France and a little bit in London. I might write a book called, in the kind of vein of A Year in Provence, is Goodbye Hollywood, Bonjour Provence. I might.
Yeah, that sounds like a good. I think that could be a good one.
Yeah, I'm starting to scribble down notes. I've had a wonderful battle with the Mary this week over a wall that I built that I wasn't supposed to, and I had to demolish. And it's all stories that are kind of different. And coming from living in Hollywood for 4 decades to suddenly being in a small village in France, I think it's a lovely contrast. And it's
my best advice to you is make sure you become mates with the local mayor.
Yeah, well, I think the local mayor works in the pharmacy as well, so I already have. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were going to shoot this movie in Normandy, and as soon as we got the local mayor on board, every door was open for us. That's what I remember.
And the key is speaking French to all the locals, because they really appreciate it. Even if you do it badly, as I do, they appreciate that.
Well, Jim, next time you're in London, please drop me a line, because I'll have my copy of your book waiting to be signed. I'm just going to show this again. And Jim has a fantastic website where there's not only all the information about the book, but there's loads of information about his career. He's got fantastic demo reels on here, both a comedy reel and a straight reel. I was going to show more clips of this, but we've kind of run out of time. But you can really see the range of his acting there. Also, Jim is very much still working. I know a lot of my director friends tune in and watch these interviews. So, all I'm saying is he's a man of considerable talents. So, put him under your casting director's radar. And Jim, if we ever get the chance to work together, I'd certainly welcome it. Also, now that you've been on my channel, just know that going forwards, if indeed you do have another book or a film or a play or whatever that you ever need promoting, you can just drop me a line and we will make room for you here to come on. And although my channel's quite small, I have some great collaborators on YouTube who watch my content, one of whom has 2,200,000 subscribers and pops on here occasionally. So I'll be bringing your book to his attention, and no doubt he'll watch this interview. So we may get to plug you a little bit further. So giving you the final word, sort of reflecting back on your career, is there, I mean, you haven't done any directing. Is there a milestone there maybe that you want to tick?
Well, I've directed. The only directing I've done is when I came over to the States to direct those drama students. And people have said all the way along the last God knows how many decades saying you should direct, you should direct, you should direct. And I probably should have. I just found that being an actor, writer, and then a producer, it was enough.
Sure.
I didn't want to really have to start another career, and directing is a tough one because you have to commit yourself to 2 or 3 years per project.
Yeah.
And I always said if it happens organically and something I write is so in demand that they, I could say I want to direct this and they say, yes, absolutely. If it happens organically, I'll direct, but otherwise I've got a few too many balls to be juggling as it is.
There was one question I missed in the chat, which I'll throw at you quickly if you don't mind. Paul Smith asked what it was like working on Kill Your Friends. I don't think we covered that particularly.
Really enjoyed that. I loved that. And I actually the film is an interesting film. It's a very interesting book too. And I got to play a sadomasochistic gay record executive, which is not the usual.
Slightly out of your usual range.
Yeah. And I actually was very proud of my work in that, and there's some fun stuff. I really enjoyed it. It was very enlightening to me because I was working with some of the best young talent in Britain. I mean, people in that movie are really, really good, and they've all done extremely well in their careers. And I was very aware of it at the time, and they were so sweet to me. Actually, James Corden is even in it. He was one of the older lags. And they were very respectful and sweet. And the director said, you have no idea how excited all these people were when they said that you were in the film, more than Nicholas Hoult and everybody else. And I was like, well, thank you. There's more bullshit. But he was very sweet, and they were lovely to me. And I really had a great time on that film. And I don't think the film quite hit the heights it should have. But it was a great experience. And what I enjoyed the most was being surrounded by, because I'd just come off a film with some quite poor actors overall. And I felt like this is really uneven. And I felt like the level of acting in that was fabulous. And they were all 10, 15, 20, 30 years younger than me. And I was just so impressed by the talent. And it was so kind of invigorating to be around that.
Fantastic. Well, my last question to you is, as you've now relocated to France, do you have a particular favorite type of wine? And if so, what is it? Because I'm a bit of a wine guy.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to say, I like French wines, but I love California wines. I'm actually planted my own little vineyard here, and we'll see whether anything comes of that. It'll probably be absolute shit.
That sounds like a potential documentary series to me. Get Christopher Guest and Eugene Levy to come and stay for a week, and
exactly, Chateau de crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
That's not a bad idea, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, geez, and I make it my own olive oil here. We make our own olive oil, which is great. I'm just experiencing a different way of life, and I'm still involved in the business and doing meetings from here in London. I'm in London a lot of the time as well. And I haven't totally left LA because my house is still for sale. By the way, if anyone wants to buy a fantastic house with 360-degree views of LA, it's a stunning property, but it's for sale. And so
you should have given me the link. I could put it up on screen right now.
I will. Yeah.
I'll post it for you on my social media.
Yeah, it's a lovely place, and I'm kind of very sad to leave it, but I felt it was time to move on, and I don't need to be in LA anymore. I kind of things come to me or they don't come to me, and that's it. And I also am moving into a different kind of chapter of my life, so I wanted to try something new.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty content and happy with where you've landed, and I think that's probably the most important thing of all, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest piece of acting I've done all day. You know, I'm always striving for different things and more things, and discontent with where things are, and I'm ambitious and whatever. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I think if nothing else, I promise you, I am always honest. I don't filter. I have no filter.
Well, a lot of people say that about me. So I'm clearly drawn to similar people. We like that on this channel. I've done 113 interviews now. Yours is actually listed as 112 because I had an extra one that came on yesterday to push a lad who's doing a one-man Dostoevsky play in London. So I brought him on to push his show, and his show is completely sold out, so that's nice. But yeah, so I've done 113 of these, and I always encourage my guests to speak their mind and say what they think, because I think as you say, there's a bit too much bullshit in the world, and if we were all a bit more honest with each other and open with each other, maybe things would coalesce a bit better. But anyway, all right. Well, look, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you responding to me when I reached out, and I was so pleased when I saw your email and was like, oh my God, this is great, because you're one of the best character actors on the planet, if I can say that without that phrase causing offence. And I mean, you know, I don't like putting people in boxes, but whenever I see you in a show, I always know you're going to do something different, and I always know you're going to do something interesting, no matter how big or small the part is you've been given. And that's why I always remember you on screen. And when I did watch Best in Show the first time, I too was one of the people that initially thought, oh, they've got a real dog guy in here, until I suddenly went, that's the guy from Independence Day. That's when the penny dropped. But I was that convinced. So you do have a really authentic acting style and presence, and long may that continue. And I think a lot of young actors can learn a lot from watching your performances. So
Well, thank you so much. And you're now a candidate to do the eulogy at my funeral.
oh, well, let's hope that's not any time soon. But yeah, do let me know when you're back in London, and we'll meet up for a non-specific French glass of wine somewhere. And I'll bring my copy of your book along. I'll bring you a copy of my book as well, and I'll give you a copy of that.
Yeah,
So
mine will be less worth if I've signed it.
I don't think that's true. All right, well, look, I'll let you go. Thank you so much, Jim.
Have to go to dinner. Lovely to see you, and thanks very much for having me on the show.
All right, thank you. All the best. You take care.
Bye now.
All right. And okay, so we're going to wrap it up there. Just again, thanks to Jim Piddock for coming on. If you're not familiar with Jim's work, all the information with his website and everything else, you can find it all down below. So don't forget, we're going to be back on the channel in just a few hours, because I've got the Nielsen ratings tonight, and in particular this evening we're going to be discussing a new show that's on Disney, which, guess what, I'm going to be highly recommending that you watch. And I don't get to say that about Disney shows very often these days, but I have done it a couple of times in the last couple of months. And this 4-part drama series, Suspect, the shooting of Jean-Charles Jimenez, is absolutely gold standard television drama. You must watch it. It's absolutely worth your time. I'm going to be getting into it tonight. I'm glad I was able to take most of the questions in the chat. Yeah, thanks very much. And by the way, Paul, Jim did cover the age that he moved to LA earlier in the chat, I think before you came on. So if you watch it from the beginning, I think you'll find he moved there in his 30s. Okay, now I'm streaming this via Zoom, and we've done it sort of through various mechanisms. So I'm hoping when I press the end meeting that the live stream will actually go off. And if it continues with a black screen, that'll be a bit odd. I also can't play my usual end credits because we're not doing this through StreamYard, annoyingly. So I'm pretty sure if I put stuff up, although weirdly enough, the chat is coming up in StreamYard, but I'm pretty sure if I put the end credits on, I don't think they'll come on in there. I might just try it quickly to see. So I put them on there. Let's have a look. No, I don't think that's not gonna appear here. So we'll just hide those. Okay. So I'm just gonna turn it off, I guess, and hopefully that'll work. All right. So back here tonight, 10 p.m. live for the Nielsen ratings with my usual panel of guests. We'll be talking about the show I just mentioned and some other stuff. I'll be talking about the latest episode of Tom Hardy's Mobland and one or two other shows as well, and or episodes 4, 5, and 6. All right then. Until then, see you soon.